I'm Tori, 34, and I paid for the party I wasn't allowed to attend. My mother said 9 words at family dinner. My 12-year-old daughter went still as glass. 2 days later, I mailed a box to that party. When my mom opened it in front of everyone, she went pale. For 6 years, I'd been the quiet bank behind this whole family. The mortgage, my dad's heart surgery, every holiday, every cake, every folding chair. Nobody thanked me. Nobody had to. I just paid. That night, the bank closed. What I sent wasn't revenge. It was a goodbye. And the part none of them expected was the simplest part of all. I never once raised my voice. Welcome back to calm drama stories, where ordinary people set quiet boundaries that change everything. If a family ever made you feel like loving them meant letting them use you, this story is for you. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. The dining room smelled like pot roast and lemon polish. My mother's good table runs 10 ft long, and every Sunday she sets it like a magazine. That night, she'd laid out place cards, cream stock, her looping cursive. I counted them while she talked about her 65th birthday party. Brooke, Tyler, a card for every cousin. There was no card for Maddie. I told myself it was an oversight. My mother does not have oversights. She has decisions. It's going to be at the Hartwell Garden, she said, beaming. Catered. The whole family together. I set down my fork. The whole family. Tori. She smiled the way she smiles before shekuts, then she said it. Your daughter is not invited to my birthday party. The table went quiet. My sister Renee studied her plate, but I caught the corner of her mouth lifting. Maddie sat beside me, 12 years old, holding her napkin in 2 fists. The kids' table is full, my mother added, lighter now, like that settled it. I looked down the runner. 2 empty chairs, 2 clean settings with no cards. Aunt Pat reached for the rolls and said nothing. My father pretended to be very interested in his water glass. Make it a thing, my mother said. It's one party. But it was never one party. I'd seen this slow exclusion building for years, the way you notice a crack in a ceiling only after the plaster falls. I didn't argue. Arguing was what she wanted, the scene she could retell later as proof I was difficult. So I did something she didn't expect. I went very still, like my daughter. I have learned over 34 years that my mother feeds on reaction. Take away the reaction and you take away her dinner. So I folded my own napkin. I placed it beside my untouched plate. Maddie, I said, get your coat, sweetheart. My daughter looked up at me with her father's wide brown eyes. She didn't cry. That was the part that broke something loose in my chest. She just nodded, slid off her chair, and went to the hall closet. Oh, don't be dramatic, my mother said. We're going to be late for something, I said. We had nothing. You always do this, you make everything about you. I helped Maddie into her coat. My father half rose, then sat back down when my mother touched his arm. Drive safe, he said quietly. He couldn't meet my eyes. The October air outside felt clean after that room. I buckled Maddie in, even though she's too old for me to fuss, and she let me, which told me everything. We were 3 blocks down Maple before she spoke. Mom. Her voice was small in the dark car. Did I do something wrong? I gripped the wheel. 40 years of swallowing things rose up in me, and I pushed it back down because she needed steady more than she needed angry. You did nothing wrong, I said. Nothing. Then why doesn't Grandma want me there? I didn't have a clean answer. Not yet. The honest one would take me 2 more weeks and a cardboard box to find. Because some grown-ups make mistakes, I said, and call them traditions. She watched the street lights slide by, and I started quietly to do the math. People hear accountant and picture a gray little man with a calculator. My clients hear my name and sleep better at night. I run a small tax and accounting firm 2 suites off Route 9. 11 clients became 90 in 6 years. I built it the unglamorous way, doing returns at the kitchen table at 2:00 in the morning while Maddie slept in a laundry basket beside me. I was 22 when I had her, and her father left before she could hold her own head up. So I learned to hold everything. I worked the front desk at a dental office by day and took night classes for me CPA. I failed the regulations section twice. I passed it the 3rd time the same week our power got shut off. I tell you this not for sympathy. I tell you so you understand what kind of woman doesn't argue at a dinner table. I am very good at boundaries. I tell clients no for a living. I tell the IRS no. politely, with documentation. I have made grown business owners cry by simply reading them their own numbers in a calm voice. And yet for my mother, I had no boundary at all. I had a wide open door and a checkbook hand, a smile that I'd practiced until it looked real. I could draw a hard line for a stranger over a $40 discrepancy. I could not draw one for the woman who raised me. Even when she was teaching my child, she didn't count. That contradiction had a price. I just hadn't added it up yet. That weekend, for the first time, I opened the spreadsheet I'd been quietly keeping and let myself look at the total. Here's what nobody at that table liked to say out loud. 12 years ago, my father's contracting business folded in a single bad winter. 2 clients didn't pay. The bank didn't care. By spring, the house I grew up on Linden Street had a foreclosure notice taped to the door. I was 22 and broken pregnant. I couldn't help then. It haunted me. So I promised myself I would never feel that helpless again, and I kept that promise the way drowning people keep promises. Obsessively. 6 years ago, when my firm finally turned real money, the house came up at auction. I bought it. I put my parents' names on the lease for $1 a year and never raised it. They live in my house. They have for 6 years. Everyone knows this. It is not a secret. It's just a fact nobody says at dinner, like the spot on the ceiling. I pay the property taxes. I carry the homeowner's insurance. When my father needed a triple bypass 4 years ago, I wrote the check that the insurance wouldn't cover. $14,000. I never mentioned it again. And every gathering, every Easter ham, and every 4th of July somehow lands on my card. The deposit for my mother's 65th birthday party at the Hartwell Garden. Mine. $1,100 paid in August, before I knew my daughter would be left off the list. I didn't do any of it for thanks. I did it because being needed felt like being loved, and I couldn't tell the difference. That weekend, staring at the spreadsheet, one quiet question surfaced and wouldn't leave. If I paid for all of it, what would happen if I stopped? The exclusion at dinner wasn't the first slight. It was just the loudest. My sister Renee has 2 kids, Brooke and Tyler. On my mother's refrigerator, there are 9 photos. I counted them once while waiting for coffee. 7 are Brooke and Tyler. One is a faded picture of Renee at her prom. One is the whole family, and Maddie is half-cropped at the edge. My mother calls Renee's children my grandbabies. She says it warm, automatic, like breathing. She calls my daughter Madeline. Full name, the way you address a stranger's kid at a school function. At Christmas, Brooke and Tyler get wrapped gifts under the tree with bows. Maddie gets an envelope, usually short $20, usually handed over with, "I'll get you something better next time." Next time never came. There were 11 next times. I counted those, too. It turns out I count everything. I just hadn't let myself feel the totals. When Maddie made the honor roll, my mother said, "That's nice, dear," and changed the subject to Tyler's soccer. When Tyler made the honor roll, there was a cake. I had explained it away for years. My mother is old. My mother is stressed. Renee lives closer, so the kids are around more. There's always a reason, and the reasons stack up neat as a ledger until one day you read the bottom line. The bottom line was simple, and I'd been refusing to write it. My mother had decided, somewhere along the way, that Renee's children were real grandchildren and mine was a guest. "Renee's kids are just so easy, you know," she told me once, smiling. I'd smiled back. I always smiled back. I was beginning to understand that Miss Mull had a cost, too. You'd think a woman who had just been gut-punched would plan something fierce. I didn't. My first instinct was to fix it. That's my disease. Give me a wound and I'll reach for the bandages before I feel the cut. By Monday morning, I had 3 plans, and all of them involved me doing more. Plan 1, throw Maddie her own little party that same weekend. Bigger, better pony, maybe. I'd outshine my mother with kindness, and nobody would have to feel the ugliness underneath. Plan 2. Take my mother to lunch, just us, and gently explain how the exclusion looked. Use my calm client voice. Bring her around. Plan 3, pay for an even nicer venue and somehow finesse Maddie back onto the guest list so my mother could save face, and I could keep the peace I'd been buying for years. Every single plan ended with me spending money and energy to smooth over something she had chosen to do. I was at the counter sketching party ideas on a notepad when Maddie came in for cereal. She read the pad over my shoulder. "Is that for me?" "Maybe," I said. "Would you want a party?" She thought about it the way she thinks about everything, carefully. Then she said something that stopped my pen. "You don't have to buy me a different party, Mom." She poured her cereal. "I just wanted to be at the regular one." 12 years old, and she understood the thing I'd been dodging. You can't fix exclusion by building the excluded person their own nicer cage. I looked at my 3 plans. Then I tore a page off the pad and folded it small. The fixing was over. I just didn't know yet what came after. That night, I went and put away laundry and found Maddie sitting on her floor with her backpack open. She was holding a card, folded construction paper, careful marker letters. Happy 65 on the front, a drawing of a cake with the right number of candles. She'd made it before the dinner, before she knew. I watched from the doorway as she opened her backpack, slid the card into the inside pocket where it wouldn't get bent, and then stopped. She took it back out. She looked at it for a long moment, the way you look at something you're deciding about. Then she tore it in half, quietly, not angrily, just done. She put both halves in her little trash can and zipped the bag. She didn't see me. I stepped back into the hall and pressed my hand flat against the wall. I'd told myself the slights were survivable, annoying, unfair, but survivable. Kids are resilient, people say, but standing there, I understood what was actually happening. My mother wasn't just hurting me through Maddie. She was teaching my daughter a lesson, repetition by repetition, gift by missing gift. The lesson was you are worth less. You are the guest. You are the one we can leave off the list. And Maddie had started to believe it. You don't tear up a card for someone you still expect to love you back. Something in me that had been warm for 34 years went quiet and cool. Not rage. Rage I could have talked myself out of. This was colder than rage. It was clarity. I went downstairs, opened my laptop, and started reading about how to transfer a deed. I wasn't going to fix it. I was going to end it. 2 days after she uninvited my child, my mother called me about money. Not to apologize, not to ask how Maddie was doing. She called because the caterer needed the balance. "Tori, honey," warm voice, the one she saves for asking. "The Hartwell people want the rest of the deposit by Friday." I was at my office desk. I let the silence sit for a beat. "Did you hear me?" She said, "I heard you. It's $2,200 for the catering, and I want the gold balloons. The big ones, the 6 and the 5. They're $40 each, but they photograph so nicely." She had room in her budget to plan balloons. She did not have room for my daughter. And listen, her voice dropped conspiratorial now. "Don't mention to Renee that you're covering it. Let me handle the family side. I don't want her feeling like she should chip in. You know how proud she is. So I should pay quietly and let my sister believe our mother was generous. I'd be the invisible bank funding a party my child was barred from while everyone praised the woman at the head of the table." "You're the responsible one, honey," my mother said, filling my silence. "You always have been." She meant it as love. That was the worst part. In her mind, being the one who pays is a compliment. "A throne, not a chain. I'll let you know about Friday," I said. "What's there to let me know? Just put it on the card like always, the card like always, 4 words. And every one of them certain I'd say yes. I have a client," I said, and hung up before my voice could change. Then I sat very still and did not put it on the card. Renee texted that afternoon. My sister never calls when a text can do less damage and leave fewer fingerprints. "Hey, Mom told me about Sunday. She feels bad it got tense." I read it twice. "Mom feels bad it got tense. Not that she uninvited a child, that it got tense." I didn't answer right away, so a second bubble came. "Don't make Maddie's thing bigger than it is. You know how Mom is about her parties. It's her day, Maddie's thing." As if my daughter being publicly cut from a guest list were a tantrum my kid was throwing. Renee is 38, 2 years older than the gap between us has ever felt. She stayed in town. She married a man who sells insurance and never quite closes. She has done, in my mother's eyes, everything right, which mostly means she stayed close and never outgrew the kitchen she grew up in. I used to think Renee envied my career. I've come to understand it's simpler and sadder than envy. Renee's whole worth in this family is being the daughter who didn't leave. If my kids and her kids were treated the same, she'd lose her one advantage. So she protects her children's special status the way I protect my firm's reputation, fiercely and without admitting she's doing it. It's just one party, came her third text. Let it go. I typed 3 different replies and deleted all 3. None of them were calm, and calm was the only weapon I trusted. In the end, I sent nothing. Renee read that silence as agreement, the way she reads everything as whatever's most convenient for Renee. That was fine. I didn't need her to understand. I needed her for once to find out. I am a CPA. When I cannot sleep, I do not count sheep. I reconcile accounts. So that night I opened the file. Not a secret file, just the household spreadsheet I'd kept for 6 years out off a bit, the way you keep receipts in case the IRS ever asks. I'd never let myself look at the bottom right cell, the cumulative total. I scrolled to it now. Property taxes on Linden Street, $9,000 a year. Insurance, $2,200. The bypass shortfall, $14,000. The new water heater. The roof patch after the hailstorm. Dad's cardiology copays. The ones he thinks Medicare covers. The monthly transfer I send to their checking. $1,400 every first of the month. Automatic. For incidentals. And the parties every party. 6 years. The cell at the bottom held a number with 6 digits in it. I looked at it for a long time, not with pride, not with resentment exactly, more like a doctor finally reading her own chart. This was not generosity anymore. Generosity is a gift you give freely. This was an arrangement nobody had ever named, where I supplied the money and the family supplied the verdict that I was the difficult one, the show-off, the daughter who left. I had bought my own bad reputation monthly on auto pay. The number sat there blinking with the cursor. I realized I had every legal right to all of it. The house was in my name. The accounts were funded by me. Not $1 of this required my mother's permission to stop. I had spent 6 years feeling powerless in that family. I closed the laptop. For the first time, the feeling in my chest wasn't powerlessness. It was leverage, and I hadn't even decided how to use it yet. My niece Brooke came by Thursday to return a casserole dish, which is the kind of errand my mother invents when she actually wants information. Brooke is 14 and decent, which in that family makes her a miracle. She stood in my kitchen petting our cat and not quite leaving. "Maddie around?" she asked. "Soccer, back at 6:00. Oh, she lingered. Her phone buzzed on the counter where she'd set it. The screen lit up. I wasn't snooping. It was right there, face up. A group chat. Name across the top reads Sunday Crew with a little grandmother emoji beside it. I knew every family group I was in. I was in the dull one. Family Logistics, where my mother posted the Costco list. I had never seen this one. The preview line showed before the screen dimmed. "Mom, did Tori pay the Hartwell balance yet? Need to know about the Brooke saw me see it." She grabbed the phone and pressed it to her chest. Face going pink to the ears. "That's just it's a planning thing," she said, "for the party." A planning thing I'm not in. She looked at the floor, my sweet miserable niece. 14 and already trapped in the family's machinery. Aunt Tori, her voice cracked a little. "You should probably see something, but you can't tell anyone it was me." My pulse went very even. The way it does before I open a return I already suspect is fraudulent. "I would never," I said. She held the phone for a second longer, thumb hovering. Then she set it back down on my counter, screen up, and walked to the window to give me deniability. "Scroll up." She said quietly, "Start at September." I picked up the phone. Before I read a single message, my own phone buzzed. Maddie from the soccer field sending me a screenshot. It was my mother's public story post. A photo of the seating chart for the party, printed and laminated, propped against the gold balloons that I was apparently supposed to be funding. The chart listed every name, tables of 8, hand-labeled in my mother's cursive, Renee's family, Aunt Pat, the church friends, Brooke and Tyler each at their own little marked seats. No Madeline, not at any table. Not at the kids' table she'd claimed wasful. Under the post, the comments were stacking up. "Looks beautiful, Carol. Can't wait." Then 3 comments down, a cousin I barely knew had written, "Where's little Maddie sitting? Don't see her on there." My mother had replied publicly for everyone to read, "We're keeping it to immediate family this year." Immediate family. My daughter, her own granddaughter, reclassified in a comment thread for the whole extended clan to see and like. Maddie had sent me the screenshot with no words, just the image. A 12-year-old doesn't need a caption to say, "I saw what Grandma posted about me." I texted back, "I love you. We're doing something way better that day." Then I put my phone face down so she couldn't see my hands, the laminated chart. She'd laminated it. You laminate things you intend to keep, to display, to make permanent. That detail did something to me that the dinner hadn't quite finished. The dinner could be called a bad moment, a flare of temper. You don't laminate a flare of temper, you laminate a decision. I turned back to Brooke's phone, still warm on my counter, and I scrolled up to September. What I read there rearranged everything. The Sunday crew chat had been running since spring. My mother, Renee, Aunt Pat, and 2 of the church women. 40, 50 messages a week. It was, on the surface, a logistics group. Who's bringing what? When's the roast? But I read it the way I read a set of books somebody's been cooking. You don't look at the clean entries. You look at the pattern. In April, planning Easter, Renee had written, "Can we do baskets just for Brooke and Tyler this year? Maddie's getting old for it anyway." My mother agreed. Keep it simple. Maddie was 11. She'd hunted eggs that Easter alone in the yard while the cousins compared baskets she didn't get. In June, my mother Tori transferred the monthly. Good. Remind me to ask her about the AC unit. Remind me to ask her. I was a line item between the church bake sale and a question about Tyler's cleats. There were dozens. My name appeared again and again, always attached to a dollar amount, never attached to a feeling. Tori's covering it. Tori won't mind. Ask Tori. Put it on Tori's card. And threaded all the way through a quieter current. Renee floating little comments about how I thought I was better than them now. How my money came with an attitude. How Maddie was being raised without real family values. Whatever that meant in a town she'd never even lived in. My mother never disagreed. She agreed or she let it stand. Which in a family is the same thing. I sat at my own counter in the house I owned reading my family describe me as a wallet and my daughter as a problem. Then I reached the message from 2 weeks ago. The one that explained the whole machine. The message was from my mother, posted the night after she'd uninvited Maddie at dinner. Renee had asked, "Isn't it going to look bad leaving her out?" My mother's reply sat on the screen in plain gray text. "Maddie isn't really one of ours." I read it 3 times, 6 words. My mother rations her cruelties into the fewest words she can like she's counting them out. She kept typing. The follow-up was worse for being honest. "She's that man's child through and through. Tori made her choice when she ran off with him and came back with a baby and a chip on her shoulder. Renee stayed. Renee's kids are ours. I'm not pretending anymore." There it was, the whole rotten foundation finally lit. This wasn't really about Maddie. It was about me leaving. I left town at 22, pregnant by a man my mother had called beneath us, and I'd had the gall to survive it without her. Worse, I'd thrived. Every check I sent wasn't gratitude in her eyes. It was evidence of the daughter who'd and done better, waved in her face every first of the month. She couldn't punish me directly. I was too useful and I didn't react, so she punished the one part of me that couldn't defend itself. My daughter was being made to pay the interest on my independence. Renee had answered the message with a thumbs up. A church friend had added, "You have to protect the family unit." The family unit, funded entirely by the woman it was protecting itself from. I set Brooke's phone down. My hands were steady. That surprised me. "You okay?" Brooke asked from the window, not turning around. "Yes," I said, and strangely I was. I finally knew exactly what I was dealing with. Maddie came home at 6:00, smelling like cut grass. I made grilled cheese, the good kind with 2 cheeses, and we ate at the counter. I didn't tell her what I'd read. Some weights aren't a child's to carry, but I asked her something I'd never asked because I'd always been too busy fixing to ask. "If you could pick," I said, "what would you want about Grandma's family? Not what's possible, what you'd want." She chewed and thought. Maddie always thinks before she answers. She got that from neither of her parents. "I don't need a party," she finally said. "I don't even need Grandma to like me, I guess." She picked at her crust. "I just don't want to feel like the leftover one. Like the kid you set an extra plate for and then take away. The leftover one, 12 years old. I'd spent 6 years and 6 figures trying to buy this family's approval. And all my daughter had ever wanted was to not be the one they took the plate away from. I couldn't give her that family. You can't pour love into people who have decided you're the help. But I could stop setting myself out as a plate for them to take and replace whenever they liked. Okay, I said. Then here's what we're going to do. We're going to stop waiting for a seat at that table. She looked up. What does that mean? It means we're getting our own table. And theirs is going to get a lot more expensive. Keep thinking about how long I called this love. Paying their bills, smoothing every fight, swallowing every slight, and calling it being a good daughter. If you've ever confused being needed with being valued, stay with me. Because what I did next, I should have done years ago. Comment if your family ever made you the one who fixes everything. Friday morning, I did not call my mother back about the catering balance. I called a real estate attorney instead. Her name was Diane Foster. She'd done a closing for a client of mine, and she had a calendar opening at 11:00. I sat across from her with the deed to the house on Linden Street, a deed with only my name on it. I want to transfer ownership, I said, full title, to my parents, as a gift. Diane raised an eyebrow. Lawyers are paid to raise eyebrows. You want to give them the house, it's worth what, $340? $380 now. I'd had it appraised in August for insurance. Yes, free and clear. Mortgage, no lien. I want it in their names by the end of next week. Most people come in here trying to keep property from family, she said, not hand it over. I'm not most people's daughter. I explained only what she needed. The house would be theirs, truly theirs, with no strings I held. They would also, for the first time in 6 years, be responsible for the taxes, the insurance, the upkeep, the failing furnace I'd been quietly nursing along. I was not taking anything from them. I was giving them everything and keeping nothing, which is a very different thing from revenge and far harder for anyone to call cruel. There'll be gift tax paperwork, Diane said, already drafting. And they'll need to sign acceptance. They'll sign, I said. My parents had never once turned down something free. When do you want them to find out? I thought about the laminated seating chart, the gold balloons, the party it was supposed to be funding from the shadows. At the party, I said. I want them to find out at the party. Diane smiled slowly. I'll have it ready. That afternoon, I opened my banking app and did the quietest, most violent thing I have ever done. I started removing my card. First, the family checking account. For 6 years, a transfer of $1,400 left my account on the first of every month, automatic, invisible, as steady as a heartbeat. I canceled the recurring transfer, one tap. A little gray message. Scheduled transfer deleted. Then the Hartwell Garden. They had my card on file from the August deposit, set to auto-charge the balance on Friday, the day after tomorrow. I called their events line and asked them to remove my payment method. Of course, the coordinator said, cheerful. Will someone else be settling the balance? The host will handle it, I said. Carol Bishop, it's her party. Perfect. We'll reach out to her directly about the remaining $2,200. We'll reach out to her directly. I hadn't even planned that part. I just told the truth. And the truth had teeth. Then the cable bill in my parents' name that ran through my card. The lawn service, the pharmacy auto refill account where my father's prescriptions quietly billed to me. One by one, tap by tap. I wasn't slamming any doors. I was simply stepping out from under a weight I'd volunteered to carry and letting the people who'd called it their right feel how heavy it actually was. It took 11 minutes. 6 years of being the family's foundation undone in 11 minutes from my office chair between a payroll return and a sandwich. That's the thing nobody tells you about being the responsible one. The same hands that hold everything up can simply open. I felt no triumph. I felt the strange, clean lightness of setting down a suitcase you forgot you were carrying. Then I waited for them to notice. My mother noticed the way predators notice, not the facts, the shift in the air. Sheckled Saturday and her voice had changed. Sweeter, higher, the voice from before the asking, the voice she used when I was small and she wanted me to forgive her for something she'd never name. Tori, sweetheart, I've been thinking. About what? About Sunday, the dinner. Maybe I was harsh. A pause, waited, performed. You know I love you. You're my daughter, no apology yet, just the throat clearing that sounds like one until you listen. I'd love for you to come to the party, she said, just you. Come have some wine, see everybody, just me, not Maddie. She was offering to let me attend the party my daughter was barred from as though that were a gift, as though I'd be grateful for the seat. And Maddie, I asked. A sigh. The patient sigh of a woman dealing with a difficult child. Tora, we talked about this. Don't start. No, I said, calm, even, I won't be coming. The sweetness evaporated. It always does fast, like she runs out of it. After everything I did, raising you, you'd skip your own mother's 65th over Aig's list. Yes, I said, you've always been selfish. Renee would never, I know, I said. Renee stayed. Something in how I said it made her go quiet. I think for 1 second she heard that I knew. Not everything, but enough. Are you still paying the caterer? She asked, and there it was. The real question under all the love. Talk to the Hartwell people about that, I said. They'll be reaching out. I hung up gently. No slam. A slam is a feeling. I was past feelings now and into procedure. The party was 8 days away. Renee called within the hour. My mother had clearly dispatched her, the way she always sends Renee to do the yelling she's too dignified to do herself. What is wrong with you? Renee said. No hello. Mom's in tears on her birthday week. It's not her birthday yet. You're really not paying. You're going to humiliate her in front of the whole family over your kid. Over your kid. There it was. Even now, the framing. My daughter's exclusion was an event Maddie had somehow caused. Renee, I said, did you tell Mom to leave Maddie off the list? Silence, just long enough. That's not, it wasn't like that, she said. It was exactly like that. April, the Easter baskets, you wrote, can we do baskets just for Brooke and Tyler? Maddie's getting old for it. I shouldn't have known that. I heard her realize I knew it. Who showed you that? Her voice climbed. That's a private group. You've been managing this for years, I said, curating which grandkids count. Because if mine counted the same as yours, you'd have nothing special left, would you? You think you're so much better than us, she spat. And the truth came out the way it always does with Renee, dressed as an accusation. With your firm and your money, you've always thought you were better. Maddie's just like you, stuck up. She's 12, I said quietly. She's a little snob just like her mother, and Mom sees it. So now I had it from both of them. The verdict was inherited. Maddie was guilty of being mine. Thank you, Renee, I said. That's clarifying. Don't you dare ruin this party. I'm not ruining anything, I said. I'm just not paying for it. There's a difference. You're about to learn it. My father texted me Tuesday. My father does not text. He pecks at the screen like it owes him money, and he only doses it when my mother isn't watching. The message took him, I imagine, 10 minutes. Tori's dad, your mother said Maddie was busy that weekend. Soccer tournament. That's why she's not coming to the party. Is that not right? I read it twice. He believed it. My mother had told my father, the man who'd lived in my house rent-free for 6 years, that Maddie wasn't coming because she had a soccer tournament. He hadn't seen the laminated chart. He wasn't in the Sunday crew. He'd been kept in the dark, fed a clean little lie because my mother knew Gerald Bishop has many faults, but a hard heart isn't one of them. He wouldn't have stood for it, so she made sure he never had to. I sat with that for a while. It complicated the picture. I'd been ready to file my whole family under one heading. My father didn't fit it. I typed slowly. No, Dad, there's no tournament. Mom uninvited Maddie at dinner. Said your granddaughter isn't really one of ours, Renee agreed. It's been going on for years. I watched the typing dots appear and disappear, 3 times, finally. That can't be right. Then a minute later, she wouldn't say that about a child. He didn't know my mother the way I did, or he'd chosen for 40 years not to. I don't lie, Dad, I sent. You know that about me. The dots appeared one more time, then nothing. He'd put the phone down. I felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger at him, something closer to grief, but I didn't change my plan. The deed came back from Diane's office on Thursday, signed, notarized, ready for my parents' acceptance. A clean legal instrument transferring a $380,000 house from my name to theirs. I bought a box for it, cream-colored, the heavy kind with a lid, the kind you'd put a real gift in. I tied it with navy ribbon because navy was Maddie's favorite color, and nobody at that party would know that. But me. Into the box, I put 4 things. First, the deed. with a note clipped tight in my own hand. This house is yours now, free and clear, no strings. It always should have been a gift. Now it is. Second, a letter on my firm's letterhead, formal and short. It stated that effective immediately all recurring financial support would end. The monthly transfer, the insurance, the taxes, the prescriptions, the lawn, the cable, the parties. A single page, no insults, just a list and a date. Third, a final accounting. 6 years on 2 pages, every line ending in that 6-digit number at the bottom right. Not a demand for repayment, just a record. I thought they should see once the shape of what they'd been calling their right. Fourth and last, I put in the 2 torn halves of Maddie's birthday card. Happy 65, Grandma. The cake with 65 candles, the careful marker letters, torn down the middle by a 12-year-old who decided she was done hopping. I taped a small place card to the inside of the lid, cream stock to match my mother's. In my best version of her looping cursive, it read one word, Madeline, a place card for the seat she'd never get to sit in. I closed the lid. The navy ribbon held. The party was Saturday. I want to be honest about what this was and what it wasn't because I've turned it over 100 times since. It wasn't a trap. A trap is hidden. Everything in that box was true and already mine to do. I was giving them a paid-off house. I was ending payments I'd never been obligated to make. I was showing them a number that was simply the truth. It wasn't an ambush, either. I wasn't going to be there to enjoy it. That mattered to me more than I expected. The whole point was that I would be absent, the way I should have let myself be absent from their judgments for years. And it wasn't revenge, no matter what Renee would call it. Revenge wants the other person to suffer. I didn't need my mother to suffer. I needed her to stop being able to reach my daughter. The house, the money, the parties, all of it had been the rope that tied us to her table. I was cutting the rope and handing them the rope and walking away. Maddie asked me that night, "Are we going to the party?" "No, baby." "Are you sad?" I checked. I waited for the old ache, the need to fix, the smile I'd practiced. "No," I said and meant it. "I'm not sad, I'm done." Done with what? Done paying to be insulted. There's a kind of love that costs you everything and gives you a folding chair you're not even allowed to sit in. I tucked her hair back. "We're not buying that anymore." She nodded slowly, the way she does. "Can we get pancakes Saturday instead?" "We can get all the pancakes," I said. The box sat by the door, cream and navy, waiting for a courier. I slept like the dead. Saturday came up gold and cold, the kind of October morning that smells like wood smoke. The party was at 4:00. I scheduled the courier for 3:30, so the box would arrive while everyone wassated, while the gold balloons were photographing nicely, while my mother was holding at the head of a table I'd paid the deposit on. Then Maddie and I went to get pancakes. We drove to the diner on 6th, the one with the chipped blue mugs, and Maddie ordered the tall stack with strawberries and didn't ask once about her grandmother. We talked about her science project and a book she was reading and whether cats dream. After we went to the park by the river. She's 12, technically too old for Theswings, and she swung anyway, high, laughing, her coat flying open. I sat on the bench and watched my daughter be a kid who wasn't the leftover one just for an afternoon, and I felt the last thread of guilt let go. My phone stayed in my pocket. I didn't check the time. I didn't picture the garden. I'd done my part. The truth could deliver itself now. At 3:40, a single text came in from the courier service, delivered. Signed for C. Bishop. I read it once, then put the phone away and pushed my daughter higher on the swing. While they set a table that left my daughter out, we got pancakes and didn't check our phones once. Funny how quiet feels like freedom when you finally stop apologizing for existing. The box was already on its way. If you've ever chosen your kid over keeping the peace, you know exactly how light that morning felt. Subscribe if you needed to hear that today. I wasn't at the Hartwell garden, so I'll tell you what happened the way I learned it, from Brooke, from 2 cousins, and from my father, who each told me a piece without knowing I'd assemble the whole. By 4:00, the garden was full. String lights, the gold balloons, 65 candles waiting on a sheet cake. My mother in her good blue dress holding court, laminated seating chart on its little easel by the door. The catering had a hitch. The staff were polite about it, but the head server had been quietly asking my mother since 3:00 about settling the outstanding balance, and my mother had been quietly waving him off. A problem for later. A problem she assumed, as always, would resolve itself the way problems did when I was paying. At 3:30, the courier had come up the garden path with a cream box and a navy ribbon, a gift on her birthday. My mother loves gifts more than she loves most people. She had Brooke sign for it and carried it to the head table herself, pleased, telling everyone she'd open this one now in front of the family because that's the kind of thing she does. She likes an audience for her good fortune. She turned the small card over. From Tori, it read, "Happy birthday, Mom." Brooke said my mother actually softened, that she said out loud, "See, she came around, she always does." That she smiled at Renee, a victorious little smile. The smile of a woman whose difficult daughter had once again folded. Renee, Brooke said, did not smile back. Renee had been in the Sunday crew. Renee knew I didn't fold anymore. My mother pulled the navy ribbon. It slid loose easily. She lifted the lid in front of 40 people and reached inside. That was the last easy moment she'd have that day. The first thing my mother lifted out was the deed. She didn't understand it at first. She read the note clipped to the top, the one in my handwriting. "This house is yours now, free and clear. No strings, it always should have been a gift. Now it is." Brooke said she watched my mother's face do something complicated. Pleasure first. A house, a gift of a house, then the slow arrival of the rest of it because my mother is not stupid, on la cruel. And the two are different. If the house was now a gift, free and clear, then it had never been hers. It had been mine. For 6 years, she'd lived in my house and called it her home and her right. She set the deed down and picked up the letter on my firm's letterhead. 1 page. She read it standing up. Effective immediately, all recurring support, the monthly transfer, the taxes, the insurance, the prescriptions, the parties, the color, my cousin told me, left my mother's face from the top down, like a shade being pulled. By the time she reached the date at the bottom of the page, she was the gray of the tablecloth. Then she picked up the third thing, the accounting. 6 years, 2 pages, every line, and the number at the bottom right, the one I'd finally let myself read at my own counter. She saw it in front of the church friends and Aunt Pat and her victorious blue dress. The last thing fell out on its own when her hand started to shake, the torn card. "Happy 65, Grandma," in 2 pieces, the cake with 65 careful candles. And from the lid, the little cream place card I'd lettered in her own cursive came loose and dropped onto the white tablecloth, face up, where everyone at the head table could read the one word on it, Madeline. The seat my daughter was never allowed to take, delivered to the seat of honor. The garden went very quiet. Into that quiet, my mother whispered the only thing she had left. "Your daughter is not invited to my birthday party." She'd meant to say it like a defense. "It came out," Brooke said, "like a confession." The head server chose that moment of all moments to come back about the balance. He didn't know what was in the box. He just knew his manager wanted the catering settled before the cake. He leaned down, polite, professional, and said it at a volume meant for one person that the silence carried to 40. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt. The card on file was declined this week and removed. We'll need someone to settle the remaining $2,200 before we serve. Who's the responsible party?" Who's the responsible party? For 6 years, the answer to that question had been me, automatically, invisibly on auto pay. Nobody had ever had to ask it out loud because nobody had ever had to think about it. The money simply appeared like weather. Now it was a question hanging over a head table in front of the whole family. The card was gone. The responsible party wasn't coming. And every person in that garden was doing the same arithmetic at the same time. The arithmetic I'd done at my counter 2 weeks before. Who pays for this? Tori pays for this. Tori isn't here. Brooke said you could watch it move through the crowd like wind through grass. The church friends glancing at the gold balloons differently now. Aunt Pat setting down her wine. A cousin murmuring, "Wait, Tori pays for all this." My mother had spent years quietly letting people believe she was the generous matriarch holding the family together. In the space of 90 seconds, the whole arrangement stood naked on the lawn. The server waited. 40 people waited. My mother looked at the deed, the letter, the number, the torn card, the place card with my daughter's name lying on her white tablecloth, and she had nothing to put on the table. No card, no funds, no version of the story that survived contact with that single page. She had spent the family's true foundation on excluding a child, and the bill had just come due in public with witnesses, the way she'd always preferred to do her cruelty. This is the part where, in another story, I'd have a satisfying line. I wasn't there to deliver one. The silence delivered for me. My mother did not stay calm. My mother is not built for the calm I'd learned. She went, by every account, from gray to red in seconds. The tears came first, the manipulative kind, the kind that had ended every argument of my childhood. "How could she do this to me?" she said, to the garden, to the church friends, on my birthday, my own daughter, after everything I've done for her. Nobody moved to comfort her. That, Brooke said, was new. For the first time, the room had information, and the information didn't match the performance. When the tears didn't work, the blame came. She turned on Renee. "You said this would be fine. You said she'd never actually do anything." Renee caught, started backpedaling in front of everyone, which is how Aunt Pat learned about the Sunday crew, because Renee said, too loud, "I didn't put everything in the chat, it wasn't just me." And a cousin said, "What chat?" The whole machine came apart on the lawn. The group where they'd called my daughter not really one of ours. The years of curated baskets. The arithmetic of which grandchild counted. It spilled out in front of the gold balloons, because the two of them turned on each other the second the money was gone. And through all of it, my father and said nothing. He'd come believing Maddie had a soccer tournament. He watched the deed, the letter, the torn card, the place card with his granddaughter's name. He watched his wife cry and blame and his other daughter scramble. Then he picked up the place card. He read the one word on it, Madeline. And my father, who never raises his voice, looked at my mother and said the 4 words that would end up on every retelling of that night. "What did you do?" He wasn't asking me. For the first time in 40 years, he was asking her. She didn't have an answer for him either. I learned all this later. While it happened, I was on a bench by the river with a thermos of cocoa, watching my daughter try to touch the sky with her sneakers. My phone started at 4:15. "Mom, decline, Renee, decline. Mom," a voicemail icon, Aunt Pat, a number I'd had for 30 years and used maybe twice. Renee again, mom. The garden was burning down behind me and my pocket buzzed like a trapped insect, and I felt sitting there the strangest thing. Nothing urgent. For 6 years that buzz had owned me. A call from my mother meant a problem to solve, money to send, a fire to put out, and I'd jump every time because being needed felt like mattering. I looked at the screen lighting up over and over. Then I turned the phone face down on the bench and went back to watching Maddie. "Was that Grandma?" she called from the swing. "Just my phone being silly," I said. She pumped her legs higher. "Push me." So I did. I stood behind my 12-year-old and pushed her toward the cold gold sky, and the phone buzzed itself out against the benchwood unanswered until it finally went quiet. That was the inversion, if you want to name it. Not a clever speech, not a courtroom moment, just a woman who used to come running, choosing for the first time not to. The party fell apart without me. That was always the point. It had only ever held together because of me. Here's what the truth costs once it's out of the box. The party ended early. The cake was served to a thinned-out garden after Aunt Pat settled balance herself, mortified, and never let my mother forget it. The gold balloons went home with nobody. My parents own the house on Linden Street now, free and clear, exactly as I promised. It's a gift and a real one. But the first property tax bill came in January, $9,000, and the furnace I'd been nursing finally died in February, and there was no card on file to make those things quietly disappear. They are learning at 65 and 67 the weight of the suitcase I carried for 6 years. Renee stopped speaking to my mother for a while. When the Sunday cruise spilled onto the lawn, 3 relatives left it, and 2 of them messaged me. One wrote, "I always wondered who paid for everything. I'm sorry I never asked." Another just wrote, "That was wrong, what they did to your girl." Brooke texted me the next morning, the only message I cried over. "I'm glad you saw it, Aunt Tori. I'm glad you got out." 14 years old, and she understood that I'd gotten out. I told her she could come for pancakes any Saturday she wanted. No group chat required. She comes now, most weeks. Maddie has a cousin again. I did not lose money. The math, in the end, came out clean, the way I like it. I lost a monthly transfer I'd never owed and a reputation as the difficult one that I'd been overpaying for anyway. What I gained, I couldn't put in a spreadsheet, but I felt at the first quiet weekend nobody called. My mother left one voicemail I kept. It was 4 minutes long. In it, she cried. And she explained. And she told me how much she'd sacrificed. And she said the word ungrateful twice. She said I'd humiliated her. She said a daughter doesn't do this to her mother. What she never once said in 4 minutes was sorry. Not to me, not to Maddie. Maddie isn't really one of ours had been easy to type. Sorry was a word my mother could not find even alone, even crying, even with everything gone. So I didn't call back. There was nothing to answer. My father was different. He came to my office on a Wednesday in person, holding his hat in his hands like a man at a funeral. "I didn't know," he said. "I should have. Let her keep me from knowing because it was easier." His voice shook. "I watched her do that to a little girl and I sat there, your girl, my granddaughter. I let him sit with it. I didn't rush to make him feel better. The fixing was over. I'm not asking you to come back to her table," he said. "I'm asking if I can know Maddie. On your terms. However you want it. On my terms." He was the only one who'd ever offered that. "You can take her for ice cream," I said. "Saturdays, just you." "We'll see." He nodded, eyes wet, and put his hat back on. He takes her every Saturday now. He's not allowed to mention her grandmother, and he never has. Some doors you open a crack for the one person who knocked the right way. The rest I left shut. Family isn't who gets to spend your name and your money when it suits them. It's whoever saves a seat for your child without being asked. And I finally stopped paying for a table that never had a place for mine. That's my story. One uninvited child, 6 years of quiet bills, and a box that finally said no. If someone in your life mistakes your kindness for an open account, take this as your sign to close it, gently and completely. Share it with someone who needs it. Watch the next story in the description and I'll see you there.